Fans, welcome to that extravaganza known as the Steelers Hangover, brought to you by BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. My name is Brian Anthony Davis. My good friend Tony Defeo is along with us as well. And what we're going to do today is we're simply going to go ahead and talk about the game last night. Is it a bad hangover where you wake up wondering what you've done, how bad you feel, or is it one of those good ones where you're like, hey, that was a good party, and I'm really glad I was involved? And Tony, I think you could answer the question very easily when I just tell you Steelers 27, Bengals 3.
Hey, Brian, good to be with you as always. And yeah, I don't see how anybody could have anything bad to say about that game. It was a pretty thorough victory and probably their best game in almost a year. And it was well needed after the 0-3 start.
That's for sure, Tony. I mean, really, the season's, that game started for me about 4:05 on Sunday afternoon when I saw that the Cleveland Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens. And so all of a sudden I'm like, hey, they win this game. They're one game back in the division. Yeah. And they've got a division game under their belt, and you got to beat Cincinnati to go ahead and start division play off well. And now they are one game back of Baltimore, one game back of Cleveland. And Cleveland has a very tough game next Monday night in San Francisco, taking on the 3-0 San Francisco 49ers. They've had a week off. Hopefully they've had a chance to get all of their turnovers under control. Let's just put it that the ball handling, let's get that under control. And I'll be really rooting for the Niners next week. But the Steelers, they could really, really do themselves well by beating the Baltimore Ravens at home in Pittsburgh, a Sunday afternoon game. I cannot wait for this. So the big question was, week one, was it kind of just like, was it an aberration, or have the Steelers turned the corner quite a bit, Tony, in just one game? What did you see yesterday that would make you feel one way or the other, and what way is that?
Well, I think they can be turning a corner because it was Mason Rudolph's second start, and I think we talked about last week about how predictable the offense looked. It looked like Ben, they would run they were running the same kind of stuff that they usually do with Ben. And yesterday was so creative, with Jalen Samuels out of the Wildcat, and I think Mason Rudolph continued to evolve. But I think that the most important thing is they allowed the defense to stay aggressive because the offense had more sustained drives and they put points on the board. So the defense was able to remain aggressive the entire 60 minutes. And I think you got glimpses of what it could do in weeks 2 and 3. And yesterday it was a 60-minute effort by the defense, just a dominant performance by Keith Butler's unit for sure.
And you know what? We do want you to get involved in this as well. In about 20 minutes to a half an hour, we will go ahead and start taking questions. So if you want to go ahead and think of some things that you want to put when we do rapid fire and we just answer questions all together, we will go ahead and do that. But yeah, Tony, you bring up a good point. And I always like to say that things roll downhill. And at one point, I don't know whether it was Booger McFarland or the other announcer that went ahead and said, I can't even remember. I used to know Monday Night Football announcers' names, and now I just don't know.
I don't recognize that guy at all.
So, I mean, gosh, it was Al. It was Howard. We were on the first name basis. The only reason we know Booger is it's because it's Booger. I mean, the name is Booger.
Right.
And not the one from the great 1984 classic Revenge of the Nerds. But with that being said, he made a point that when the Steelers were driving, it's like, this drive looks like they're just going downhill completely. And when I say done, they're running downhill. Because they were in complete control. And that was a third quarter drive that actually ended in a field goal, the 49-yard Boswell field goal. But what did you see yesterday completely that makes you feel that this can be sustained going into the Ravens game?
Well, it's because they showed so much creativity and they kept the Bengals off balance. And and they let the offense run through not just James Conner, but James Conner and Jalen Samuels. And we talked about last year how much better the offense looked when it ran through Conner. And yesterday you had it running through two running backs. And I think, you're not going to be able to sustain the Wildcat thing through the course of the year, but I think it can help the offense evolve and get Mason Rudolph to the point where he can take the reins more strongly and it be his offense by the end of the year. But I think moving forward, this offense, the way it was designed yesterday, I think it can get the team to where it needs to go over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
So the first 3 weeks of the season, Tony, all we did, well, especially me, and I am definitely guilty of this. The only thing that I wanted to say over and over is this is the most unimaginative, generic offense that I've ever seen. And then last week during the San Francisco game, I'm thinking, wait, this has been Roethlisberger's offense. Don't they need to go ahead and formulate an offense that surrounds the talents and emphasizes the talents of Mason Rudolph? And that's kind of what they did yesterday. You brought up a good point that I really wasn't thinking of. They went ahead and took the onus off of number 2. Mason Rudolph did not have to carry the team on his shoulders, even though he did. I mean, going 20 for 24. Was that his 24 for 28, 229 yards and 2 touchdowns? That's a pretty good line. But at one point, he was 17 of 18, and that was at the end of the first half. I mean, I know it's small little passes, things that we complain about the Patriots doing to us all the time, but finally we're doing what has been done to us, and it's pretty hard to stop, and you have the personnel for it. And it's funny, the one guy that you would think that they would be employing in that would be Ryan Switzer, and he was hardly anywhere to be found. He didn't get a single target. So
he wasn't in for a. I don't think he was in for a snap. I think he just played special teams.
So they have gone out and emphatically said that the main receiving core on this team is Juju Smith-Schuster. It's James Washington, and it's Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson has announced himself with authority that he is a true player on this team, and someone that you have to account for. Now we're needing James Washington to step up and do the same thing. You had a game where you didn't need Juju Smith-Schuster to catch more than 3 passes, but if he needed to be called upon, he would have been there. But the offense was working those running backs for yards as receivers. And the thing about it, if you look at James Conner's line, when you say, okay, the guy only got 42 yards, are you going to complain about that? The reason you're not, because those tap passes that were basically runs to me, he accounted for like 30, 40 yards with that. But when he had a total offense of 125 yards, 83 receiving on 8 receptions, and 10 carries for 42 yards, then you're like, wow, he had an amazing game. And that's just, remember when they, I believe it was Arians, would do those quick little passes to Antonio Brown and the receivers, just maybe Haley did it too. I'm not sure which one now at this point.
I think they both did.
But it was a point to, like, we don't feel like we have the running game in check, so this is going to be our running game. So, I mean, if you're a fantasy geek and you're like, oh, he only got me 42 yards, but you're happy that he got 83 more yards receiving. So it doesn't matter how he gets the yards, Tony, as long as he's getting the yards. And that's exactly what James Conner is doing. That is exactly what Jalen Samuels is doing as well. He is he had 57 yards receiving. He had 26 yards rushing on 10 carries as well. But, you know, here's the thing about it. He was also a Wildcat quarterback, even though he did not throw the ball whatsoever. You know, so with that being said, it was an imaginative offense. Cincinnati was not ready for this. But can the Steelers sustain this? And could they possibly do it next week? Maybe because this is my thinking. If you go dust off the same Wildcat and the same thing that you just did against Cincinnati, they're going to be ready for it, because I don't care what personnel is on the Baltimore Ravens. They're smart enough. Wink Martindale is definitely smart enough to go ahead and stop that. So what can they do different? Is this a sustainable offense? And you already answered that they've got to mix it up. But do they have enough? Does Randy Fichtner have enough to go ahead and mix this up for next week? What are they going to come out with? Or are they just going to fall back into old stuff?
Well, I think you saw it's an evolving process. I mean, it was his second start. He's, meaning Mason Rudolph, he has 10 quarters of experience under his belt. And we always talk about grooming the quarterback. Well, unfortunately, this is how you groom quarterbacks, like you groom any other position. He has to get in there and play. And I think the more experience he gets, the more this offense is going to evolve. And I think what you're going to have to see maybe next week is the receivers have to be in the mix a little bit more. I mean, last night, how often were both Connor and Samuels just open underneath? That's probably not going to happen next week, because the Ravens defense is more disciplined, and they're gonna see that on tape, and they're going to try to put more guys near the line of scrimmage to take on those running backs and make sure they're covered out of the backfield. So maybe it's up to the receivers now. The onus is on a Juju or James Washington or Deontay Johnson, somebody like that. Those three guys, Vance McDonald, hopefully he comes back, where they get open more downfield, and then maybe you can play to Rudolph's strengths and maybe take the handcuffs off him a little bit, and maybe you exploit them downfield. It's not going to be easy, not with a Marlon Humphrey as one of their cornerbacks. He's a really good young player, so it's not going to be easy. But I think they're going to have to mix it up. The receivers are going to have to play a bigger role next week.
Yeah, they are, but you said something very interesting there. And what I noticed when you said if they have to pay attention more to the running backs out of the backfield, then those guys are going to get open more. If Vance McDonald's back, that's just an extra weapon, because believe you me, they found a new weapon in Nick Vannett. This guy, I mean, he's 2 for 28. And is, with not even being on the team for 4 or 5 days, I guess. He just arrives, and then they go ahead and they put him in. They had to put him in, of course, but he contributed right away. So, and here's another thing about Vannett that not a lot of people brought up, but I noticed he worked out in the offseason for some reason with Mason Rudolph. So these guys are familiar with each other. They really have a rapport, and that's a great thing. Vance McDonald has a rapport with Mason Rudolph. You might see 2 tight end sets now with 2 guys capable of catching footballs very well. I mean, you won't be able to double up McDonald, so if they're both healthy, that's a great new wrinkle there. And the one last thing to say about Nick Vannett is, hey, your 5th round pick just came in and got 28 yards. You don't see that very often from the 5th round pick, the first time they step on the field. So I'm liking that trade too, because we could talk about first rounders all you want, giving up first rounders, but a 5th round pick, guys, that's a great deal. You have an opportunity to go ahead and get something out of them now. I love it, and I'm worried about now. And the great now is you have a team that is 1 game out of first place and a chance to be in a tie for first coming up next week. So I love it. So
I agree.
I'm sorry. I just go ahead, Tony.
Well, no, I just expand on what you said about Vannett and McDonald working out in the off season. I mean, you saw that on that one play, the comeback catch by Vannett. I mean, essentially he was covered, and Rudolph anticipated that he would be open, and he threw it only where he could catch it, and he dove down and made a great catch. It showed great chemistry between the two of them, and it showed great instincts, quite frankly, by Rudolph. I thought it was really one of his best throws of his career so far.
Yeah, that's true. And we were talking about it, and I was doing knee-jerk reaction like I always do. And one of the things that I wrote was, I just want to see them try to stretch this defense out with a pass downfield. And when they did that, did you see how open just how very open Deontay Johnson was. It was crazy. I'm still not sure why he had to jump in the air like that. I was getting a little scared on that. But, that's so I was really happy with what they did with the offense. But my question to you, Tony, is one of the most important things and the biggest problem with the Steelers so far this year that no one expected was the offensive line. So you have the offensive line playing. I thought the first series, I thought they looked awful. I was like, they're getting no running room. Nothing's happening. Then they started opening things up with the pass. And all of a sudden, when you're handing off, they're getting running room. So what were your thoughts, and who really shined the most on that offensive line last night?
I thought Pouncey and DeCastro looked great, especially pulling our running plays. They both look like they're Pro Bowl selves, and the entire line looked great. I mean, I don't think Rudolph was hit once. The Bengals weren't even they didn't even post a quarterback hit. So I thought the entire line looked great, obviously, but I thought DeCastro and Pouncey looked comfortable, looked like their old selves on pulling plays, because they obviously did a lot of those with the jet sweeps, and it was like watching those guys when playing at their their vintage best.
Now here's something that Jared Devil just mentioned, and I don't know what I've been doing, how I missed this, but I was not aware that LJ Fort is now a Baltimore Raven. So we're actually going to see LJ Fort come this Sunday. So thanks, Jared Devil, for that. I'm not sure where I've been, but there you go. Sometimes I get lost in the shuffle as well, but it'll be interesting to see LJ Fort back. That does not change the situation with the draft pick. So I'm still thinking that next year you will this season, you'll see Moncrief let go to try to recoup that third-round draft pick for Le'Veon Bell. Just because with the Eagles cutting Fort, that means that that's off the table. But I don't think I'm mistaken in this. I don't think that changes anything as far as the Steelers, since he was picked up off of waiver. Yes, Dave Schofield mentions that was yesterday's news. I agree. I took yesterday off getting ready for the game. So I was in the basement, let's just put it that way, and I was completely out of sorts. So thanks, Dave, for rubbing that in with a nice emoji. I really appreciate that, because Dave knows that I would never, and I mean ever, put anything any of Dave's mistakes out there. He knows I wouldn't do that. I'm surprised okay, I can't even do that with a straight face. Dave and I have a friendly rivalry, and I do with Jeff as well. And so Tony, let's look forward real quick. I mean, we're looking back, but let's look forward to Baltimore. What part of yesterday's game plan, could they go ahead and recycle for the Ravens without getting burnt? And what do they need to stay away from yesterday?
Whew. I don't know, that's a good question, because they always have a disciplined defense, but I think you could still make some hay with the Wildcat. I mean, you don't want to go crazy with it, but you could still do those tap passes, as provided the ball security is there with Samuels and Connor, and you could still use even Deontay Johnson on sweeps. I think you have to do misdirection with their defense, because they're it's such an aggressive defense and it's such a fast defense, and it's going to be hard to challenge their cornerback. So I think you have to continue to make it a horizontal game and have those guys try to get them out of position, like they were doing yesterday with the Bengals.
Let me ask you this, my friend: do the Steelers need to become a gimmick team right now with their personnel, because they don't have Mason Rudolph seasoned, is what I'm going to say. Is that something they are going to need to do?
Oh, I think for the foreseeable future, because I mean we're in through four games now, and the receivers are still struggling. I don't know if they're struggling to get open, or if Mason Rudolph he doesn't have the confidence to throw them open. Throw them 50-50 balls like Ben would do, or another veteran quarterback would do. So I think until there's a better rapport between Rudolph and his receivers, until they're more willing to to strike downfield, I think you have to be creative with the gimmicks like they were yesterday. I think you just have to do that, and you have to keep evolving the offense every week. You have to keep tweaking it. I was saying last night, it looks like when they were doing those tap passes, not really the tap passes, but the Wildcat, it looked like they were setting up a other teams for a halfback pass or a receiver pass. So I think you have to keep evolving the offense.
Are we going to see Jalen Samuels, who I thought looked fantastic yesterday? He's a perfect wrinkle for this team. Are we ever going to see him pass the ball?
I think eventually you will. If they keep using him in that formation, eventually you're gonna have to try to keep the defense honest with a pass. And he said he threw one in college for 60 yards, 60-yard touchdown. So I think eventually they're gonna try it anyway.
Let me ask you this: who is right now at this point through 4 games? Who's the most dangerous weapon on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense? And do not say. You can't say Mason Rudolph.
The most dangerous?
Yes.
I think the way he's played, the way he's been able to get open downfield, even though they haven't been like 80-yard bumps, I think it's Deontay Johnson. I can't believe I'm saying that, but he's been finding ways to get open downfield, and Rudolph's found a way to develop a rapport with him. So I think right now he's that X factor that their offense was looking for in the receiving corps coming into the year.
Was Deontay Johnson worth a 3rd-round pick? It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah. I didn't know much about him when I first drafted him, but the more I see him, the more he looks like somebody who could really develop into something special. And the AB comparisons, they're looking more and more like they might be apt.
So if we had a certain deputy editor that is probably watching this right now, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but it rhymes with Rave Rofield. If Rave were on here, do you think that he would like to go back in time, build a time machine, and go ahead and say that maybe they didn't make a mistake taking this guy way too early?
I'm sure he might. He's gonna forever regret saying that. Yeah, but yeah, we've all been wrong on draft day. I know I've been wrong.
I'm always wrong.
Yeah. I back in 2013, I was like, why'd they draft this Le'Veon Bell? Who's he? They don't need a running back. Obviously, I was wrong about that. So.
I mean, I was wondering why they drafted another receiver after they took one in the 3rd round of 2010. So.
Right. Yeah.
So, and the rest is history. But, anyways, what I'm really excited about this whole thing, this whole new wrinkle. I thought one thing was funny. Somebody mentioned, I'm not sure who it was, mentioned that they did not see Mason Rudolph on the field lining up in the Wildcat, but there's a few plays that I saw him there. There's one that was a pretty significant play where he just stood there. I was surprised that the whole offense didn't get a false start because he just stood there as a receiver. Right. He was just hanging out.
He didn't really he kind of projected that play there by not moving.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and bring this up too. I'm with Ben. We don't need Mason, haha, because that goes back to that kind of lets Rave off the hook, Rave Rofield off the hook, because that's another 3rd rounder that Ben didn't really think they needed a quarterback at that position as well. So and I will. One of the neighborhood kids came up to me yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, did you know that Ben Roethlisberger called a radio station up last year and complained that they chose Mason Rudolph?" I'm like, "Yeah, that didn't." And this kid's a Ravens fan, so he's always trying to bust my chops here. And I'm like, "Yeah, that really didn't happen that way." "Oh, yes, it did." I'm like, "No, dude, no, it didn't." So I'm arguing with an 11-year-old, by the way, and he's like, "Oh, yes, I know it did." And this is a really intelligent kid. This kid is off the charts intelligent, but he just loves going after the Steelers, and he was convinced that he did this. I'm like, let me tell you something, buddy. So I bring that out, and I'm like, not only was I listening to it, but I wrote an article right away because I was listening to it live. And so I know all about what happened there. He was saying something a little bit different. He didn't call in complaining. So with that being said, let's talk about some bright spots. We had some really great bright spots yesterday, and we've talked about them. We have talked about the Mason Rudolphs, and we've talked about the Deontay Johnsons, and we've talked about Jalen Samuels as well. Let's look for some more bright spots like going forward that you've got to be really excited about. It could be offense or defense. Did I lose you there, Tony?
Oh no, I thought you were looking at the board. As far as bright spots, for sure. You have to go with that. You have to talk about Devin Bush in the game he had yesterday. I mean, he had 9 tackles and his first sack, a pass defense, 3 tackles for loss. I mean, he looked like the guy that we all were hoping he would be in the preseason, the rookie sensation. And yes, it was the Bengals, but still, he's a rookie, and I thought he looked totally at home. He's one bright spot. I thought Joe Hayden had his best game of the year yesterday. I thought Steven Nelson was robbed on the one pass interference. So those are three bright spots on defense. Cam Hayward looked as dominant as ever with 2.5 sacks. So T.J. Watt looked like T.J. Watt, and Bud Dupree had his best game of the year. So there were a lot of bright spots, and I think we were waiting for that kind of game to come from the defense. They've been this close the last 3 weeks of having that kind of game, and they finally put it all together yesterday.
Tony, I agree with you, but you missed a big one. You missed actually 2 biggies, but I mean, of course you missed TJ, and at this point, I mean, we just expect TJ to go nuts every week. Probably one of the best draft picks that they have had in ages. So, I mean, that's without being said. So he's easy to overlook because you just expect him to be the guy we're always talking about.
Yeah.
But Mark Barron.
Yeah,
had a phenomenal ball game. So he had 11 tackles yesterday. I believe 9 of them were solo, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the biggest plays from him was he got beat by Tyler Eifert very early after the Deontay Johnson fumble early on. And he rebounded with a lot of speed to go ahead and knock that out of the way. Knock that ball completely out of the way and force them to a field goal. And when I saw that, I was like, wow. I mean, so I'm sure he heard a lot of criticism last week. This team is I really like how this team is rebounding from bad games and taking it personally. It shows a lot of heart. And because we were really high on Mark Barron.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden we're like, it's just the San Francisco game. He had a dreadful game. Hey, they're gonna have dreadful games, but and I'm gonna quote Sean here. They need to keep playing angry. I think he was playing angry. I think Hayward's gotten a lot of guff right now because he was not playing up to par. But let's talk about another thing. The defense is gelling. Here's one of the best things about last night that no one's talking about, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up is, who we didn't hear his name hardly at all was Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, he didn't.
And that's not a bad thing, though.
No.
That means nothing was going on.
Right.
Guess who else we didn't hear his name? Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah.
So, you know what? We're not talking about the great things that they did because they didn't have to. They were doing the little things.
Right.
They were doing the little things that no one saw to mean that they weren't getting picked on. So you could actually say that Terrell Edmonds had a phenomenal game and Minkah Fitzpatrick had a phenomenal game. Yeah, they didn't show up huge on the stat sheet, but they're doing something, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's a testament to how good that pass rush was. I mean, Dalton, you could see he was so frustrated by the third quarter. He was slamming the balls. He was coming off the sideline or coming onto the sidelines off the field. He didn't have much time to go deep. So, and whenever he did, they had no success. So, safeties are kind of like linemen, offensive linemen. If you don't hear from them, it's usually a good thing. And you didn't hear their names called at all yesterday, which, as you said, is a testament to the defense as a whole, but particularly to them for staying at home and doing their jobs.
Andy Dalton threw the ball 37 times, had 21 completions for 171 yards, and that interception as well. But you look at only one receiver caught more than 4 balls. Actually, well, Giovanni Bernard and Joe Mixon had 4 each, but they're running backs. But Ogden Tate, he was 4 for 50, and he's a giant 6'5" guy, and that's a guy that he wasn't stymieing them. But when you hold Jalen Rose, oh my gosh, did I just do that? John Ross. I'm not even a basketball fan. I'm talking about Jalen Rose. That's how excited and giddy I am about this game. But when you hold John Ross and Tyler Boyd to 6 catches and 69 yards, then you're doing a great thing. I had a guy come up to me. I went to trivia before the game, and this guy's like, all right, I need about 15, 16 points from Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd to win tonight. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to get that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'll get that no problem. Yeah, he didn't get it. I mean, he didn't get that at all. They didn't get in the end zone. They didn't, I mean, six catches.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're a half point per league, a half point per reception league. So, I mean, yeah, he didn't come close to it. And David Laughlin brings up, in fairness, Jalen Rose didn't do anything last night either.
That's true. Nobody on that team did.
Yeah, so yeah, Jalen Rose had a bad game.
And I thought
oh, sorry, Tony, real quick. Yeah, Michael Jordan, the great one, didn't have a great game either. He was getting called out all night. So
points.
Yeah, so and Michael Jordan was on the field.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony. I stole your thought.
Well, no, I just thought the defense showed a lot of character after that Johnson fumble. I mean, you've seen a theme this year. Whenever the offense turns the ball over, the defense just gives up a touchdown pretty easily. Whereas last night they limited to a field goal, and if once for that, they would have had a shutout. And you said, Barron had made that great play on Eifert to recover after being beaten, knocked the pass away. So I thought they showed great heart after the Johnson interception, because it happened early in the game. It could have been very easy for them to say, "Up, here we go again." It's gonna be another long night, but they wouldn't let that happen.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to open up the live chat, and we're going to talk about the defense and if they can sustain that. But before I do that, I want to talk say one more thing about a shining star that we really got to talk about, and it's Randy Fichtner. I'm hard on Randy Fichtner, just like I'm hard on Butler. But you got to say that he came out and he really put together an innovative plan to recognize the strengths of everybody on that team. So, as far as that goes, I have to give him credit.
Yeah. Well,
now, go ahead, Tony.
Well, no, I mean, it's a blow. It has to be a blow to a guy like that. A young, inexperienced offensive coordinator to lose so much talent in a short period of time, especially your franchise Hall of Fame quarterback, and now you have to start from scratch essentially, and try to find a way to build the offense around other people. So, I think we sometimes forget that coaches, they can learn too, and I think hopefully this will be a way for him to improve as an offensive coordinator moving forward.
So we're talking about the defense now. We're going to transition back over. Can they sustain this? Now, Vodka Drinker says, finally, the D plays under 70 snaps. Yeah, I mean, a really big deal there. Bill Davis chimes in with defense complement of the offense and defense complement the offense and vice versa. And then Kevin Shin, he mentions that it's because they didn't die of exhaustion.
Right.
That's that's a real big thing there too. Jerry Cherry Band, which one of these days I gotta know what that means. I love. We've talked about this all the time. I love some of the names here, and I'd love to know what the inspiration were. For maybe we just do a show in the off season when we just talk about everybody's names when we're looking for stuff to talk about. Jerry Cherry Band says it's a new team out there. Sean Manahan, and these are great comments, by the way. Sean, now they're getting up to game shape, so they're playing better. That's what the defense is doing. Is this a sustainable defense? Do you think the defense has really turned a corner here?
Oh, I think they've been itching to have a game like that. I think they've been close to having a game like they had last night. They just needed the right circumstances, and the offense provided that by keeping them off the field. Troy Polamalu, of all people, said it years ago. Like the one commenter said that the offense complements the defense and vice versa. They work hand in hand, and I think this defense can sustain itself because I think the talent is there. We've talked about it. They have 10 first rounders on the that side of the ball now, and their pass rush has been a thing for 2+ years. It's been one of the best pass rushes in the league. They just needed a couple people to put it all together. I think you have that with Bush now in the middle, and maybe Fitzpatrick in the secondary, and that really rounds out the defense. And I think it's only going to get better it's only going to get better as the year goes along. They just need to be able to finish off games, and we saw that last night. They finished off that game, and they put their foot down. And they put their throat, or they stepped on the Bengals' throat, and they wouldn't let them up.
Dwayne Cantel, he says, "Can we show Bud some love?" We got to show some Bud some love for what he did last night. Really, really good game. I thought at one point he was mugged on one play, and he still made the sack. They didn't call it, but they didn't have to because he got in there. Or was it on the forced fumble? Maybe it was on the fumble, but it was great. Here's another comment too, and I just lost it. Jay Steele 3000. Yes, we fixed the free safety problem. Now it allows the LBs to play clean. That's really what it's allowing the defense to do. And now if the offense could keep them off the field, like it was mentioned that they were tired. Bill Davis, once again, no relation. I mean, we could be somewhere down the line. My dad I bring this up every time. My dad's Bill Davis, but this is definitely not my dad. Does anyone know what an interference is anymore? I can answer that question, Bill. If the Steelers are accused of an interference call, then it is interference. If the Steelers throw the red flag, believing they have been interfered with, then it is not interference. So that's basically.
If they don't know, how are we supposed to know? If the officials don't seem to know, Al Riveron doesn't seem to know, so I don't know how we're supposed to know.
I mean, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. But it's all. I mean, like, you almost know that when Tomlin throws the flag, that red flag, that they're not going to go ahead and call it. It's almost like a conspiracy, and I know it's not, but it just seems like it sometimes. And I was like, yeah, I mean, everybody, the guy that was the referee. Everybody has the referee in the booth now. The referee that they had in the booth, and they go to, yeah, that's clearly, to me, that's pass interference. And like, of course, you knew it wasn't going to get overturned, even though everybody in the building believed it was interference. I'm wondering if maybe it's not the Steelers, or maybe it's just a league thing. They don't want to overturn too many of those to show that they're wrong. I don't know, or maybe I'm just out of it.
That's what they said in the offseason, but you saw that play against Seattle in week 2. What was it, 2nd and 20? I mean, that there was no indisputable evidence to overturn the non-call on the field, and that changed the whole game around. So I don't know what to expect from week to week with that new emphasis on pass interference.
So Bill, that's the best answer we could give you on that. Cree, a great friend of the show, was disappointed on the offense taking the foot off the pedal in the fourth quarter. I think they were just trying to make sure that they just get out of the building. Darren Daulton says this, and Tony, I'll let you elaborate on this because I think you're going to agree with this. Show Boswell some love too, kicking them right down the middle nearly all night long. Yeah, loving Boz. I mean, I'm not even. Let's knock on wood. John Gruden, knock on wood if you hear me. But with that being said, I feel really comfortable right now with him. What are your thoughts on Boz?
Well, we talked about it all last season. I think it was a mental thing with him. I think he was in his head all year after missing that overtime kick in Cleveland, and he never got over it. And I think he decompressed in the offseason. He practiced. He did everything he needed to do to get himself right. And I think it's showing this year. He looks like he did 2015 through 2017. He looks like the old Boz. So I think whatever mental demons he had last year are gone, and I think he's back to his old self. And I can't wait to see how he responds in a tight situation. Hopefully, not anytime soon. I don't know if my heart can take it, but I'm sure there will be a important kick that he has to come through on, and I can't wait to see how he responds.
I'm feeling pretty good about that. Real quick, Jerry Cherry Band says Jerry Cherry's a singer-songwriter and a Steelers fan. I love it. That's awesome. Steven, if I mess up your name, if I mess up anybody's name, please, you could phonetically write it down. I'm going to try this. Steven Carestes. We changed the topic to what is a catch to what is a pass interference. Yes. That was it's the flavor of the month right now. So Snowman says, boss is back. Another friend of the show, Captain Underpants, 14 sacks in 4 games. I mean, gosh, the record's 55. So right now, it was at 56 now. But right now, they're right on track for 56 again. But I think they're going to have. I think they're going to have a lot of multiple, like 4+ sack nights. I think with this defense right now, I'm thinking that you're going to go ahead and take the over every single time on sacks. So, one more thing about Boswell, the 49-yarder. Yeah, when I saw 49-yarder go through, I felt pretty good. Vodka drinker, we won't jinx him, but you got to give the guy credit, though. I definitely do not want to jinx this guy whatsoever. Oh, I did a good job on the last name from Steven Carestes. So, and Snowman agrees it was 56 sacks is the record. Music playlist guy. Gosh, I'd love to see your music playlist then. That's really cool because I'm a music playlist guy. I have over 250 songs on my iTunes just from 1984 alone. But that's for another day. That's for the off season too. We'll do my little 80s music trick too, but we're going to save that till February because hopefully this team's playing late in February. Boz was put on the IR at the end of the year. You sure he wasn't dealing with an injury last year and that it was leading to him over-adjusting because of that? I agree with you 100%. In fact, that's something I almost brought up. I just moved on with it because the great thing about Boz is if he wasn't using it as an excuse, and even after the season, did not use it as an excuse. I would go crazy with how bad Mike Mitchell was. Every time Mike Mitchell had a bad year, he bragged. I don't want to say bragged, but he scapegoated the injury that he had. And I was playing with a torn this, and I was playing with this, and I had a Rubik's Cube stuck in my throat. It was like there was always an excuse. I don't know where that came from. I was thinking 80s, I guess. But with that being said, that's there's always seemed to be an excuse, and Boswell's not an excuse guy. And gosh, we were hard on that guy last year, so let's keep on knocking on wood on that guy. Love it. With that being said, we're going to get ready to wrap up. If you do have any more questions for the show, there's one from way back, and I don't have your name because this is kind of a rapid fire thing. Somebody asked what legitimately they think the Steelers record is going to be this year. Oh gosh, Schofield. 83 had some pretty good hits. I'm an 84 guy, but that's just me. Schofield, always giving me guff, and I think guff makes me sound like an 80-year-old man. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. Mark Davidson says 10-6. So what are you going to go ahead and revamp their record? So the first quarter's over, 1-3. What are you thinking, Tony?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many unknowns. That's the thing. We still don't know about Rudolph. We still don't know about how this receiving corps is going to respond without Antonio Brown. But I think the way they've looked the last 3 weeks, even without Ben, I think you can realistically, provided all things, they're hitting on all cylinders. I think you could, at this point, based on the teams that are on the schedule, you can expect anywhere between 7 and 10 wins. I know it's not a perfect answer, but I think we can anywhere in that range. They might be anywhere between 7 and 10 wins.
You know what? I'm thinking that this team is a 9-7, 10-6 team at worst, and I was saying that all along. I have been giving Dave junk all night, but Dave did a great job last week on the show, and even like all through the week on his shows and every show he's done, going ahead and mentioning that the Steelers' clear path is probably through the division, and the schedule is front-loaded. It's a lot harder. 13-3 is possible, and that's winning out. And, in a way, I don't know if I want them to win out. And I don't really think that's possible because this is still a very young team that's going to make some mistakes. And when I say I don't want them to win out, it's just, that's a lot of pressure going into the playoffs. We've seen a 13-3 team go into the playoffs and really struggle. We're getting some 8-8s. We're getting some 13-3s. Snowman, I'm going to throw this up. Snowman is throwing in $2 for Jeff's number 2 Mason jersey. So our Jeff Hartman, I don't know if you know this, we always joke about him having a man crush on Mason Rudolph, and this is really since Mason was drafted. He loved it about it, and but and I have the opportunity to get some jerseys sometimes, and I'm like, Jeff, when do you want me to go ahead and get you your Mason Rudolph jersey? And he's like, well, I gotta wait until he gets his first. So because here's a guy that he only owns Ben Roethlisberger jerseys. That's all he would wear all those years. So,
sounds like he wants to be the leader.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And he is the quarterback of our little hoping to be big blog site here too. Sean Manahan says 11-5, third seed, Super Bowl champs. Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing.
I'll sign my name in blood for that.
Yeah, I would give up a lot for that. Dwayne, I love this. Mason looks like Edward from Twilight. I thought he looked more. I actually thought he looked more like Jacob from Twilight, the werewolf guy. But that's true. I also thought he looked like Sidney Crosby too. But we're gonna have to. We'll have to find a picture. Too bad we couldn't put pictures up on the live chat. I'd love to get some. We'll have to see that. We'll have to check that out. But a lot of people are saying 6th seed. Really, I think the Steelers right now, I think their best chance is to win this division. And I think it is becoming a very winnable division. Chris Lott, I love this comment. This comment just came on. And Chris Lott's from Akron. If we could take the division, that would be a great way to shut these Clowns fans up. And look, oh my gosh, now oh boy. Now we're comparing what other people look like in their Disney characters. And so yeah, music playlist guy brings up the fact that if we win the division this week, Browns lose Monday night, leading the division. Yeah, That would be huge, because you would be 2-0 in the division. The Browns would be 1-1. You would have the tiebreaker over. The Ravens, but hey, it's still a long season. The teams we lost to, the Browns and Ravens, haven't played yet. Sean Manahan brings up, hey, the Seahawks are looking like a really good team right now. In fact, I think the Seahawks became a much better team after they beat the Steelers.
Yeah.
Because that was a very winnable game. The 49ers game was a very winnable game. This team should be 3-1 right now. They're not. We've accepted that, but there's a clear path to go ahead and win this division. They've got to keep on going. So, at that point, we can't look ahead. They still have a lot of winning to do. I think that this team reminds me a whole heck of a lot of that 1989 team that started out being down 92-10, losing their first 2 games, then beat a really good team in Minnesota. But here's the thing: that team ended up 9-7. They went from a drop pass by I believe it was Mark Zeno who dropped the pass in Denver, and they had a doink in by David Treadwell in the Broncos game, and they really could have been in the AFC Championship game against the Cleveland Browns. So that was something. But this team has a lot more talent than that Bubby Brister-led 1989 team, but it kind of reminds me of it. So I think things are going in the right direction. We're going to go ahead and cut off the questions at this point. And Tony, it's closing time, and you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. So what's your final thoughts on Last Call?
Well, my final thought is I thought Mason Rudolph really, it's subtle, but I think he made some huge strides between his first start and the second. You saw that on that first touchdown to Connor when he was I think he was supposed to throw it to Juju, a little shovel pass, and he just quickly, decisively threw it to Connor. He saw that Juju was covered, and he threw it to Connor. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of an evolution from him than people think moving forward. I'm really excited about what he can do the rest of the year.
That's I'm really excited about that too. I am going to go ahead and reiterate what Eddie Brock just said. Your image there scares me, Eddie, but we got to take it one game at a time, and absolutely right. So the one game here is the Baltimore Ravens. John Harbaugh and his gang of ruffians coming to town, and here we go. So with that being said, beat the Ravens. It is Ravens week. It is something to go ahead and enjoy, because I think it is the best rivalry in all of football. Hopefully next week it's a happy hangover, as this family that I cherish, and I can speak for Tony. Tony cherishes this family as well. It's our Behind the Steel Curtain family. This is we had over 100 on the live chat. We really appreciate you being a part of our joy this week, and even when it's pain, you're around too. So we take care of each other.
Absolutely.
So thanks for a great show tonight, and we will go ahead and talk to you next week. Remember, all of the other shows on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. You can get them on any platform you want. Stat Geek is tonight as well. We're doubling up. So don't forget Dave Schofield. Always a very informative, great show. I love it. So make sure you check that out. Then tomorrow night, on Wednesday night, you'll have Jeff and Lance again. I believe it's the Standard is the Standard. And the preview show will be this week as well with Jeff, Dave, and myself. There's so much more. There's the burning question. There's Lance's, yeah, I said it. Really good stuff. We want to be here for you. Breaking news, all kinds of comments, all kinds of chat. It's really important to us. Stick with Behind the Steel Curtain for all your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. For Tony Defeo, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. You, my friends, have just been hung over. Good night.